your source for all things Texas Tech. This is the Ask Level podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, what's happening? Welcome into another episode of the Ask Level podcast, episode number 49 with Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. This one, of course, brought to you by Cantex Roofing and Construction.
I'm Mike Hebert, owner of Cantex Roofing and Construction. Every day is game day, and we'll get it right when it comes to your roofing, construction, windows, and mirrors. Call Cantex Roofing and Construction today. Together, we are one serving you.
Level. This one a little happier one than we've had the last couple go-rounds. Texas Tech football gets a couple of wins this week, one on the recruiting trail and, of course, the one on the football field, where they defeat the Tarleton State Texans 41-3. Kind of nice to get to experience that for the first time in 2023.
Winning is better than losing. Yes, this is accurate. This is obviously expected. This is I guess this was the one. I don't know if you could. There's another one on your schedule. This was the one. Gimme or kind of guarantee. I don't know if you can just write that down the rest of the way, or even with the first two, it wasn't just like an automatic kind of thing.
No, a lot of years you've had Kansas where you kind of chalk up, but you don't have that anymore, and it's
not anymore.
Yeah, I agree.
Not anymore.
I think according to the folks out west, the Wyoming game might have been your second most attainable game because you were a 14-point or 13.5-point favorite going into that one. I don't know that you'll see a spread like that the rest of the way.
Yeah, and injuries may dictate that, one way or the other going forward with somebody's quarterback situation or something like that. But yeah, so anyway, you did what you needed to do here. I thought you played well, and you got a lot of young kids in the game. I thought, which was important. I thought you ran the ball well, which I think they wanted to get going a bit. I thought, Miles Cole with a couple of sacks I thought was kind of big. Gino Garcia with a couple of field goals. You just start kind of looking down at things that you wanted to, feel better about. And I thought you could kind of check some things off the list. Granted, it's against the Texans here.
Yeah.
Because I think the real season is about to start. But and you came out of this game clean, no injuries.
Right.
Now the quarterback situation I thought was interesting, because I thought, contrary to what the masses everybody's got their guy. I think most people that in our space, they've got this soft spot for Barron and think I didn't think he looked particularly well at times. I thought he missed a couple of easy throws. He threw a bad interception. And then Tyler certainly did not look very good. So I guess I would say that I didn't think the offense in general and the quarterback spot was just overwhelmingly good. Tyler made a couple of really good throws. He had a couple of key drops by Miles Price specifically. And then there was just some wild inaccuracy. And I don't know if that's him trying to avoid turnovers so much.
Maybe.
I think I think that it's funny because I think Tyler and Barron are very different from the standpoint of, I think Tyler is so well studied that he can kind of overanalyze and almost overthinks things at times, because he's so studied. And I think Barron just plays. I think in both cases, it gets the various styles get them in trouble, a bit. But so that was a bit, and then I think we're starting to see this play out a bit, and I want to see more, but there's just not a lot of separation, man, with your skill players. Like getting open and some of these things. And here's hard data that would tell you that in the last 2 weeks, I think Oregon had 313 yards after catch. You had like 92. Last night, against Tarleton, I want to make sure I wrote it down. Tarleton had 88. You had 72. So there's not a lot of juice at your skill. This is kind of where I was coming from all summer long, and we talked about it often. Just don't know if you have a dude and a superstar. Now, one story that emerges was Jordan Brown. This is why he started. He had most of these yards after catch.
Yeah.
On the one play, Shuck hit him kind of going across the middle, and he ended up on Tarleton sideline, kind of going up and down. And I want to say that was maybe right before halftime. I can't remember, but in the second quarter, I'm not sure if that was second or third quarter. But he gives you some juice, and he's basically made Loic Fouonji kind of, you know, I mean, who didn't even get in until late in the game. It's just interesting, like watching some of the dynamics there with some of the skill spots right now, and quarterback too. But anyway, I'll quit rambling, but we can take any of those topics as you see fit.
I mean, this is the Ask Level podcast. People want to hear you ramble, Level.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't want you to have to listen to me ramble on. But.
No, you're a vat of knowledge. I think the offense is definitely an area you need to look at from last night. Saturday night, it felt like you're just missing something. I think. You want to walk away from a game feeling complete, like, all right, that was great. And I'm not complaining because you get win number one, your defense looks really good. But of the 3 turnovers, one's a pick six. And then you get 2 other interceptions. And on those other 2 interceptions, you only score 3 points off those 2 turnovers. And you want to still be able to go put the foot on the throat more. You want this team. I think you did a pretty good job of this last year. It seemed like you played really well as a team. Offense and defense fed off of each other pretty well. This year, you haven't seen that meshing that well of when the defense does something well or when the defense does something bad, the offense picks them up and vice versa. We haven't
complementary football.
Yeah, exactly. We haven't seen a lot of complementary football this year, and that's something I think I really want to see. And that's mostly pointed towards the offense and not complementing the defense well.
I think the quarterback play needs to be better. I think up front it's needed to be better. And then I just say I think some of your skill just is pedestrian.
Yeah.
I think you have good players. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I think, across the board, there's just nobody that I think when we left the radio booth last night, this is a prime example. And what game were we following, Choice? What game were we following very closely because it was hotly contested and it kind of focused on Texas Tech in a bit, and it wasn't the West Virginia game,
the Texas-Wyoming game.
Okay, and we were kind of with tie game and all that. Wyoming playing with a backup quarterback, not even the kid that was so good against you,
right?
Wasn't even playing. And then early in the third, it's 10-10, and they make a simple play to Xavier Worthy.
Yep.
And if you watch the replay, there's not really much there. It looks like the DB is just going to tackle him for like a 6-yard gain, but he's so fast, he gets around the edge, and it ends up being a 40-yard touchdown. And then you look up, and they end up rolling. They end up winning 31-10.
Yep.
They just kind of, here it went. Who's the dude for you that does that? Who's the guy that makes that play to kind of get you off the mat when you just don't really have it?
Need dogs, man. You need someone
just some juice. And this is why the commitment earlier in the week from Micah Hudson.
Yeah.
It's not just the perception of landing a quote unquote 5-star guy. It's not about, winning a recruiting battle over the entire country.
Mm-hmm.
It was as much about what he brings position wise and what he brings that you don't have as anything. Because he will be the best wideout on your team without question from the time that he steps on campus, which will be in January. So, and again, I'm just kind of like looking at different areas of the offense and everything like that. But I think there's like there's a lot that needs to be better. And I would have thought you would have been a bit better up front. I think that's a work in progress. I think it's kind of just been steady. I thought they're responsible for Taj's big night, and you don't throw it as much in this one because I think you ran it more than you threw it in this game. Because this is what I gathered. This is what Tarleton State's thinking was. This is a team that hasn't really run it well coming into this game. And when they did run it well, it was the quarterback. They're not putting that kid in harm's way against us. They're not going to run their quarterback against us. So let's take away the big play, and let's see how good they can run it, And I thought that'll – one, it kind of limits the score. It limits the big play possibilities, and you get to find out if Tech can really, really run the ball. And I thought to a certain extent they did, but I guarantee you that's what Coach Witten's their game plan was and what they'd seen from the first two games. But, Taj is a good player, and I thought they went to the well and got him going, and it was a career night for him.
Yeah, I think, don't want to be complete Big Chief rain cloud here after a win because Taj was great. I mean, he's a definite highlight from the game, and good to see that. I think that's what I take away encouraged offensively is, hey, you have that ability. Yeah, granted against Tarleton State, but we saw that ability against Oregon where he runs for 10 yards a carry, and where you have the ability to run the football if needed. So I do like that this offense, for the most part, can take what the defense is giving it and run with that.
And I don't know if you can run it when you need to. I think that the next couple of weeks, really the next 3,
sure,
we will find out. We haven't talked about this, injury-free for the most part last night. However, you went into this game missing Noah Dateray, no Tyler Owens, no Duda Banks. No Baylor Cup did not play in this one. They essentially held out Tyreek Matthews. But the one guy that I was really excited about in the offseason, and he just hasn't really been able to play yet, and I don't know how quickly we could assume to see him, is Cameron Valdez.
Okay.
Because I don't think he's like the fastest guy on your team. I think his running style leads to adding some juice to what your look is here. And we haven't been able to see him, as he's got I think Joey confirmed last night he's got an AC sprain on his shoulder, and he's had that for a couple of weeks now. So he's been suited up and warming up and all those things and technically available, but they just, emergency only. They just don't want to put him in harm's way. But that was one of the guys that you thought would maybe create a little bit of a difference here. Dre McCray, another, but honestly, it's been Jordan Brown who had the best August of anybody, I think. They talked about Mason Tharp, who's played well. But I thought from a skill standpoint, I thought Jordan Brown, he lit it up in both scrimmages, caught touchdowns from lengthy touchdowns and things like that. And so, I thought, and some of that's starting to translate a little bit, but there's a reason why he started over Loic, last night. And in fact, I would expect that to continue, so anyway, searching a bit.
Yeah. I think you do walk away feeling not empty, but like there's something missing going into conference play. And
that's what we do.
Yeah, we always. I mean, we want as much gratification as possible. And hey, you won a lot of close football games in last season. Maybe you can get back to that, because it sure looks like you're going to play in a lot of close football games in the Big 12 conference. That being said, kind of a weird day yesterday or on Saturday. It's weird when you look across college football. A lot of scores closer than they're supposed to be. The Texas-Wyoming one stretched out, but that was a really close game. I mean, Florida State played right there with Boston College. Like all over the place, we see close games or upsets. K-State loses to Missouri. So that leads me into our first question from Mitch. It says, sorry, I had this right. It says Level How is your perception of the Big 12 and Tech's chances in the Big 12 different than it was at the beginning of the season, if at all?
Well, I heard this question before most of the games were played yesterday. It was asked because after Texas beats Alabama, the question was like, okay, well, who's Texas's main competition in the Big 12? Like the legitimate contender. And I think after all the games are played, the way Texas played for three quarters, you kind of go, okay, interesting. And then Bama barely squeaks it out over South Florida, made a quarterback change. Mm-hmm. So maybe that win wasn't as big. But my initial answer would have been Oklahoma and Kansas State. And Oklahoma ends up rolling Tulsa, and then Kansas State drops a heartbreaker to Missouri. But there's not – this is going to be the Big 12 is really good, but it's really bad. Follow me. I don't know if you really have a outside of Texas now, and I just think Oklahoma, even if they just kind of rolled through it all, I don't know if their schedule strength is going to be enough to – give them the nod. But outside of Texas, because of their win over Bama, and maybe that is some things are taken away from that as we go along if Bama drops some more games. There's not a playoff contender there. I think there's Big 12 title contenders. As of yesterday, I would still tell you that Kansas State and Oklahoma are the biggest threats to Texas. I think it's kind of hard for me to suggest that Texas Tech is in that same category, but they're probably in the next tier. I think TCU, Tech and TCU, Central Florida. I think BYU had a big win at Fayetteville.
They did.
Obviously Oklahoma State and Baylor were thought to be maybe in that mix now. I don't know if I'd quite put them there. But I say that it's a good league because it's so competitive. I mean, really 1 to 14 competitive. West Virginia, I think, is a bit better than we all thought.
Yeah.
I think, and again, it's early. These are early snapshots. You've only had 2 to 3 games for some of these teams and all that. I think Kansas is maybe better than some thought. Oklahoma State, maybe not as good as some thought, at least based off of our immediate reaction. And so that's the good part, is that it's wildly competitive. Anybody can beat anybody. However, big picture, a lot of times leagues are judged based on how many top teams and national title contenders that you have. And right now, I don't know if you have anybody on paper other than Texas and maybe Oklahoma. I just don't know if Oklahoma's schedule is going to cooperate with them there, because it's on paper, it's bad. I think Cincinnati is better than we thought, at least to this point. And Cincinnati and Oklahoma will play this week. So
they're better, but then they go lose one to Miami of Ohio last night.
Okay, now I know Iowa State lost to Ohio, and then Cincinnati loses I guess a close one to Miami of Ohio. So it's hard to keep track with all these FCS.
No, I know. So it's
5 schools. Yeah.
So it was just I think it speaks to exactly what you're talking about. It's like when you think one thing about a team in the Big 12.
Yeah, that was an overtime. I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, it was an overtime, but they were trailing a lot of that game too.
It's a week-to-week sport, man.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you think you got something pegged, and then it's like, nope, that team is not anything close to what we thought they were. Or, wow,
it's a week-to-week.
They're way better than we thought they were. So, yeah, this league is so wide open. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's gonna be very fun to watch the results each week, but it's gonna be maddening trying to peg it.
Yeah,
I mean, it really is, because I think you're gonna get a lot of, sometimes when you look at your schedule, your team schedule for the season, you're like, this is a swing game, this is a toss-up game. Like you put these games where it could go either way. You're gonna get the bulk of the conference games are gonna be like this.
Yeah.
They really are. And I think it's going to be kind of maddening to try to figure it out and kind of get a feel for who is what, because just so much, movement here.
All right. Before we move completely away from the game on Saturday night and move towards West Virginia and a couple of questions on that. I think one thing you could put to bed quickly, just based off of Coach McGuire's comments, quarterback controversy, there's not going to be any this week, right? I mean, Coach McGuire basically says that.
Yeah, and we talked about this in the broadcast because I was, we meet with Coach and all those things during the week. We meet with Coach Kitley, Coach DeRuiter, and all those things, just part of what the broadcast do, TV folks do it, radio folks do it, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
We were not aware of any kind of plan other than we were aware that they wanted to try to get a bunch of young players in, and we did become aware that I guess they wanted to try to get Barron in, but it was so many other guys too. I just didn't know it would be that early in the game.
Yeah.
And I think we can agree that Tyler hadn't played particularly just great up to that point. Again, I mentioned a couple of drops by Miles, but he was inaccurate on some. It just wasn't super sharp. He made a great throw to Tharp and then had the one TD run. He scored 2 touchdowns. But it was just, so I was kind of, I wanted to make sure I asked Joey after the game and let him clarify. Man, you went to Barron fairly early in the game because it was only 24-0, which, game is in hand, but it's not put away.
Yeah, and second drive of the third quarter, right?
And you know how some of these games go. And he had even just said to us after halftime or before halftime, hey, 17-0, we were up, and we, in Wyoming, it didn't go our way.
Sure.
So. But again, Joey clarified after the game, hey, wanted to get him some time with the ones, the starters.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and Barron came in and it was 3 and out. It was right after Rabbit's interception.
Mm-hmm.
They go 3 and out, three, and then a field goal attempt, which Gino made. And then there was a couple of touchdown passes. One, you and I guess disagree. One, I still don't think was a catch. I'm not complaining. I'll take it. I just thought the ball hit the ground with Miles. And then he had the bad interception, which I don't know what was going on there, but Loic was run blocking 20 yards down the field.
Yeah, if you go back and look, it looks like Barron does a check at the line. I guess Loic doesn't see it, but he still throws into double coverage too. And that's where
you throw it to the back of somebody's head. That's what they tell you that in basketball. Don't ever make the passer. It's the passer's fault. Don't ever throw it to the back of somebody's head. That make sure they can see you. All that.
Receivers. Pat Mahomes knows this too well from Week 1 in the NFL. Receivers don't ever get credit for interceptions or blame for interceptions, even though sometimes
Happy birthday. Should. Depending on when you're listening to this, happy birthday to Pat Mahomes. He turned 28 early this week.
He's on top of the world at 28 years old. Wild. But they are
0-1.
I think yes, but on top of the world. I mean, he just won the Super Bowl and the MVP.
True.
That's I'm still feeding off the last year. So
I got you.
So quarterback controversy. I mean, you can put that to bed.
For right now, I just don't see. Internally, they're just not anywhere near that. I think they love both of these kids, and it's always awkward to talk about these conversations because you feel like you're pitting one against the other. And I get the fans have their favorite. The backup quarterback is always going to get the monster cheer, and you check on the book of faces. Or the Twitters or X's or whatever, and it's like hey, Barron's just different, this and that. Anyway, it's just I get it, but there's reasons why that they feel very strongly about the way it is going right now, but it doesn't mean that these next several games will be certainly big for everybody involved in the quarterback position, certainly if it stays the way it is right now.
So, Level, before we move towards West Virginia, this question from Jeff in the audience. What is the identity of this offense moving forward? Do you even have an identity?
I think, Zach worked a lot under Cliff, obviously. That's, and it's really be able to be good enough in all aspects to take advantage of what they give you And I think I think the other day against Oregon, it's like, okay, we're really worried about our D-line or their D-line and running it traditionally, but we put an extra hat in the box. We can punish them with the QB run game. I think last night they basically, we talked about this earlier in the show, they kind of just backed off and said, we're not letting you beat us over the top. You haven't run it well. We don't think you're going to run your quarterback. And so let's see if you can hand it off and be good enough there. Obviously, Texas Tech was. And so, but what they were, that's what Tarleton State was giving you, and you took it. And I think took it repeatedly to the tune of a career night for Taj Brooks. But I don't know, because I don't, even when Pat was here as quarterback and when Zach and Cliff were there, I don't know if you had an identity per se. It was, I think, spread, tempo, trying to score points. That's your identity. I guess
outscore the other team.
I don't know if I think obviously you want to be better than you have been. I thought honestly the offense may have played better against Oregon in some aspects than you did against Tarleton State, as far as just how clean it was and all that. And you scored some points and all those things. It wasn't that they played poorly. You just This next week will be a kind of a defensive struggle. This could be a fairly low scoring game against West Virginia. I think they're going to try to. They're not very dynamic on offense, but they run it well. Their quarterback is only going to, drop back and throw it 10 to 15 times, maybe.
Yeah.
And they'll play multiple kids, and they're going to run a couple of kids. C.J. Henderson, Jalen Anderson, I think is the other name that they've got two running backs. Like against Pitt, they were 4 of 12 on third down. But, they're going to try to play it old school wise and like get special teams involved and all that stuff. So if you can get some offense going against a pretty good defense on paper, I think it'll take you a long way. But I expect that place to be jumping next Saturday in Morgantown, because they're riding high off of the backyard brawl win. And that kind of is the game that I think Neil is probably feeling a bit of an exhale now, and you hope the whole team is actually, but I don't know. Maybe they'll roll in with a ton of confidence, because they were picked to finish dead last, man, and they've been better than that. So.
They have, no question. One more question. This one from Brandel. What improvements do we need to see from the game against Tarleton, or the first 3 games, to get a win in Morgantown?
To win in Morgantown, I think you need to play the special teams aspect of this game needs to be an even or an advantage for you.
Okay.
I think you need to be able to defend the run. That's going to be the biggest thing. If you can stop their run game and not give up a bad, they run, and then they get you on a play action pass, deep shot or something like that. If you can avoid the big play, I think you've got enough offense that you can go win this game. But you also, man, you can't, West Virginia is going to be good enough to where, because if you look at statistically between West Virginia and Pitt, both teams have about 200 yards of offense. Both teams were bad on third downs.
Yeah.
But the difference in this game was turnovers.
Yep.
Pitt turned it over 3 times, and West Virginia turned it over once. And so a couple of extra possessions, what you do with it, that's got to be eliminated. I think Joey McGuire said it, eliminate bad football and play clean. Now, again, twofold, don't turn it over, and then let's create some as well. But because you beat these guys 4 times in a row, and there's no loss for motivation on their side of it. They would love to get the monkey off their back for sure. And so,
knocking on wood, you can't see it, but that has been one of the strengths of Texas Tech this year is stopping the run, slowing the run. Teams have not gotten a whole lot, been able to gash Tech really. Even Oregon, who's got some explosive players, you held them in check really well in the run game. So that's kind of a good on good matchup going into Morgantown.
And that's why you worry about if Tyler Owens can't play or if Adedire can't play, because those guys are really good in the run game as well. But we'll see. But it's a pretty easy game plan to try on what to work on this week. There's not a lot of secrets there.
All right, Level. As we wrap up here, big news this week with Micah Hudson. What does that do? Obviously, besides getting an amazing football player, individual football player, what does that do for your program as a whole moving forward, just to land that kind of recruit?
Well, it honestly, in this space, it puts you on the national radar this week. When a lot of people were talking about your loss to Oregon, all of a sudden you kind of, on Monday, you kind of jump to the forefront of like, oh man, Joey McGuire and staff are getting it done. And I think you have to credit a guy by the name of Brian Nance on Joey's staff, along with James Blanchard. Just the personnel department. I think Kirk Bryant, I think Juice Johnson, the wide receivers coach, is Zach Kitley, Joey, just on and on. But he was at the game against Tarleton. He was at the game against Oregon. I think he's planning to be at every home game this year. But this was a history legacy type commitment, just because I think there's some fans that felt like, okay, you're never going to get a dude like this. It's just not going to happen. In fact, why even go for it? Why aim that high when it's just like all this time and effort and energy and it doesn't pay off? And again, you haven't technically signed him yet. He can't sign until December. But I don't expect any issues there, contrary to what some sort of message board rumor pops up anywhere. It was funny because I saw a different recruiting service this past Monday report, hey, Oregon's in the mix. Oregon is working on a visit. And I just laughed because if you know that young man's situation, one, his parents are not letting him leave the state, nor does he want to.
Yeah.
And so I just thought it was funny that somebody was trying to create a story that wasn't there because Oregon beat you. He was at this game and watched Oregon. Oregon has offered him like everybody else has. And yet, so it's just be careful who you believe out there when it comes to some of these recruiting stories and things like that. So, but no, the young man, his highlights are something like I have not seen.
Yeah, they had a game on ESPNU the other day with Lake Belton, and just watching a little bit of that, he will
walk in January.
Star. Yeah,
walk in January, and he will be the best skill player on your team. Period. And I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings there. That's somewhat of a comment on what's on campus, but it's really about him.
Right.
I think that they'll play him at the slot. I think they'll kind of move him around a bit. I think it opens things up for everybody. Yeah. I think he's got a great relationship with Barron and obviously Will Hammond. One of those two young men will be throwing the football to him, I would think. Obviously Jake Strong in the mix too, but Will Hammond is special. And I think obviously Barron has been involved with Micah all the times that he's kind of come up on campus and spent some time. But yeah, the kid is legit. Yeah,
definitely something to be excited about. And he commits in a time where you're kind of down about the program, and gives everybody a little bit of a lift. Earlier,
he was gonna do this after you beat Oregon because he was in town. Obviously, that doesn't happen, so he waited a couple of days. But totally his call. Choice. I know we're running out of time here, but man, I enjoyed it. Conference play is here. The season's about to begin, and good news off the field as well with the recruiting.
For sure, man. Appreciate the time. We will hopefully get 2 wins in a row and talk again after Morgantown.
Yes, sir. Talk to you next week. Keep hope alive, everybody.
That's Chris Level. I'm Choice Woodman. You've been tuned into the Ask Level podcast, brought to you by Double T 97.3. Have a great week.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3.